everyone, and welcome to this special episode, the follow-up to my very first video. Now that the writing of the Power of Three half of Paws of Stars is behind me, it's time that I examine Omen of the Stars, my favorite arc, but also one with a litany of issues. Now, I don't want anyone thinking that Omen of the Stars is just a continuation of the failures in Power of Three. These arcs are quite tightly joined in terms of their plots and casts, but they have very different problems. Power of Three tried to do too many types of stories at once, and didn't go far enough with any of them, resulting in a mangled mess of a plotline. Omen of the Stars does have a story it wants to tell, and even consistently makes progress on that plotline, to some extent anyway, but it has two main problems completely distinct from those of Power of Three. A disconnect between the characters and the conflict, and the details of the conflict itself being mangled and often stupid. To illustrate this, rather than going through each book and explaining its progress towards the goals of the arc, I will give a rundown of the main arc's conflict through each book, and then trace each main character's journey individually, to see how they interweave with the plot. The conflict of this arc is the Dark Forest building an army to launch an all-out attack on the clans. The Fourth Apprentice didn't go too deep into this conflict, something to be expected with the first book in an arc. However, it did have Breezepelt team up with Brokenstar to attack Jayfeather and Poppyfrost. We learn that Breezepelt and Tigerheart are likely Dark Forest trainees, and that the Dark Forest cats are able to come down into the physical world. Fading Echoes is what really gets this plot running, since through Ivypaw's perspective, we get to see the Dark Forest itself. The prologue shows how the Dark Forest manipulated Breezepelt with the relationship and revelations established in Power of Three, and many chapters show the Dark Forest manipulating Ivypaw based on her relationship with Dovepaw and her desire for attention. In Night Whispers, we begin seeing group training among all the Dark Forest trainees, and that the training of cats in the Dark Forest is far more widespread than the characters might have initially thought. They go through rigorous battle training every night with some brand new Dark Forest cats never before seen in the series. Their goal is revealed in the very end to be destroying the clans in StarClan. How they plan to do that, other than just attacking with trainees on their side, is unclear, but their strength and skill is growing. Also in this book, the three protagonists find out Ivypaw is training with the Dark Forest. She finds out that the Dark Forest is evil and is trying to hurt the clans, and agrees to spy on them for the three instead. Sign of the Moon, other than adding a few new trainees, does nothing to advance the Dark Forest story. In The Forgotten Warrior, Ivypool becomes a warrior in the Dark Forest? Whatever that entails. We then arrive at the Last Hope, where the Dark Forest cats and trainees begin training in and exploring the physical world. Then in the last few chapters, they attack every camp at once. Only two of the trainees decided to fight on the Dark Forest side, but the battle still led to the deaths of Hollyleaf, Mousefur, and Ferncloud among assumed others. Spotted Leaf is double killed by Mapleshade, Tigerstar double dies to Firestar, who dies to a burning tree, and the rest of the Dark Forest cats flee without a leader. The clans won. That's a pretty simple conflict. Bad guys grow in strength, bad guys attack, good guys fight them and win. This would explain why the progress on the conflict across 6 books is so slow. There just isn't much story to tell. But what fills the rest of the pages then? Well, did you notice that I didn't mention a single protagonist character other than Ivypool in that synopsis? Let's see what they were up to. Jayfeather is determined to fill the prophecy, and he does this mainly by speaking to StarClan and sometimes Rock about what they should do whenever he gets the chance. Unfortunately, neither of them are particularly good sources of information, so he spends most of his time checking in on or helping his clanmates like Poppyfrost and Briarlight, which each make very compelling stories, but aren't all that related to the oncoming war. Later in the arc, he takes a couple detours to return to Ancient Land to make Half Moon the first Stoneteller, and gets caught up in Flametail's death, which he is blamed for. Flametail's death at least ties into another plotline in this arc, StarClan being aggressive and dumb as a rock suddenly. They split up from each other, demand that the Medicine Cat stop speaking, and on Flametail's side, refuse to clarify what happened at his death to stop the conflict in the clans before the real army arrives. When that finally concludes, Jayfeather decides to pursue yet another prophecy, that of the fourth cat. He thinks of multiple cats it could be, and thinks about how important it is to find them often for the last 2 books. But just before the battle, Bluestar just tells him it's Firestar. Then, other than forgiving Leafpool, he does absolutely nothing of consequence in the final battle. For the arc in general, it felt like they were giving him menial tasks to keep him occupied without having to involve him in the conflict, since his character wouldn't stand by and do nothing. Lionblaze, meanwhile, is fully capable of doing nothing. It's his forte. He mentors Dovepaw, which has no effect on him. He's still mad at Squirrelflight and Leafpool, something that is resolved in his head spontaneously during a fight with Breezepelt and Night Whispers, and spends 4.5 books caught in a will-they-won't-they romance with Cinderheart, which has some reveals about his power and her Cinderpelt reincarnation sprinkled in for nonsensical drama to prolong the relationship's screen time. The biggest thing he does is accidentally killing Recetfur in a battle with ShadowClan, which he is sad about for half a book before it's forgotten forever. When the final battle arrives, he does at least fight in it, in ShadowClan, but other than killing one background Dark Forest cat, he doesn't do anything important. On the topic of Dovewing, she is mostly a part of this plot because she's dragged into it by other forces without acting on her own motives or beliefs. Her power, and not knowing that it's strange, pulls her into her beaver quest. Lineblaze and Jayfeather drag her into the prophecy, and Ivypool's jealousy, along with Dovewing's desire to stay close with her sister, pulls her into learning about the Dark Forest. When she does get to make her own choices, she mostly just tries, unsuccessfully, to live a normal, happy life. She plays with her sister, she cares about cats she knows when they are in danger, and she meets secretly with Tigerheart, often the only cat she can feel free with, and one that she quickly realizes she loves. She doesn't stay with him forever, though. His behavior around Flametail's murder caused her to put off their relationship and get closer to Bumblestripe, another way in which she is forced into an important part of her life without her opinions being taken into account. When the Dark Forest actually arrives, she announces their arrival, but then proceeds to do nothing for the battle itself. Of all the protagonists, Dovewing spends the least time thinking about the Dark Forest. It's not really a part of her life, it's just something she was placed into without warning. She's often a pitiable character for how little choice she gets in her own life, but she, like the other members of the three, do nothing to affect the outcome of the plot. Flametail, for the brief period that he's a point-of-view character at least, is a standard medicine cat with no knowledge of the Dark Forest at all. When he dies, though, he is lured into the Dark Forest to be nearly murdered by Ivypool, which presumably let him know what was happening. After another 2 books pass, he becomes an obstacle for Jayfeather for seemingly no reason, steadfastly believing it would be better for StarClan and the clans to be split up and angry as war is coming than for Jayfeather to be proven innocent by his testimony. He's a piece of work. Ivypool, therefore, stands as the only protagonist to have any of her story revolve around the actual battle the arc is based around. Her jealousy over Dovepaw is well established by the end of the first book, so when Hawkfrost approaches her in Fading Echoes, and his manipulations land, it works for us, even if you don't agree with the premise for her jealousy in the first place. She spends the whole rest of the arc as a point-of-view character within the Dark Forest, learning about it and seeing firsthand many examples of its brutality, from the training to the murders committed to the standards expected of the trainees. During the battle, she is able to convince the trainees not to fight on the Dark Forest side, even if that was ridiculously easy, and she witnesses and is part of the most impactful battles with Hollyleaf, Hawkfrost, and Breezepelt. Ivypool also spends some of her time working on a relationship with Blossomfall, but the vast majority of her story centers around her sister and the Dark Forest, which easily makes her the most intertwined with the arc's plot out of all of the point-of-view protagonists. Most of our characters spend the arc completely disconnected from the plot, having their own relationships and adventures entirely distinct from the conflict the arc is working with. Especially egregious is the Prophesized Three, whose entire purpose in life was supposed to be defeating the Dark Forest, doing nothing at all to stop them in the end. The only cats who could claim that, even partially, are Firestar, who, by killing the Dark Forest's leader, somehow made the battle end immediately, and Ivypool, who, within the last moments, convinced the Dark Forest trainees to fight on their clan's side. But even her part of the story is far from perfect, and the reason for that has to do with the other big problem in the arc. The Dark Forest, both in the plan they seem to have, the lore behind them, and the way they are defeated, is just silly. First off, what exactly was their plan? If they defeated the clans, either by killing them all or terrorizing whatever survivors came out, what would happen then? Would they form Tiger Clan again? Well, that can't be. Apparently Brokenstar was the Dark Forest's leader until he died, and he was always more interested in driving clans out rather than bringing them into his own clan. Were they just going to take over the lake territories? They don't need them. Dead cats don't need to eat. Is the Dark Forest so terrible that they would want a living plane to take over to get out? Well, that might have been true in previous arcs, but in Omen of the Stars, the Dark Forest is a pretty thriving place, where all cats living there in death can talk to each other and be as brutal as they like with no repercussions. But even the idea of them winning is a ridiculously far stretch for 2 main reasons. First, there was no way that a majority of the clan cats training in the Dark Forest would have ever fought beside them when that choice meant attacking the clans. Maybe Breezepelt and, for some reason, Red Willow have evil natures that allowed them to easily slide in with the villains, but everyone else was portrayed through the whole arc as a victim who was only in the Dark Forest because they were tricked and lied to about the true intentions of the cats there. Most of them were only there to become stronger for their clans, which isn't a lie conducive to making them attack, let alone kill, the cats in those clans. If we were to believe that the trainees would fight on the Dark Forest side, either we would need to see far more cats like Breezepelt and Red Willow who genuinely want to destroy the clans, or, more likely, the lies the Dark Forest told would have to be more convincing and targeted to not just make the clan cats keep training with them, but to make them fight beside the Dark Forest when the time came. This would also probably mean, for a lot of trainees, the villains would have to throw out killing the clan cats altogether, and opt for a slightly more peaceful goal that would still transition power to the Dark Forest. There is a second problem as well. If every Dark Forest cat we've ever been introduced to, even after Omen of the Stars, joined the battle, including Antpelt, who died as a trainee and became part of the Dark Forest, they would have a mass of 15 cats. If they then added on every living trainee from the time of Omen of the Stars, including Thornclaw, who was only ever said to be a Dark Forest trainee retroactively once the arc was complete, that would be another 16 cats. Discounting every queen and elder, the clans have 68 cats fighting against that force before any StarClan spirits come down to fight beside them. The Dark Forest's army of 31 cats wouldn't be able to beat that 68 clan cats even under the best of circumstances. This is why the Last Hope had to add in random faceless, nameless, descriptionless cats during the battle to increase the size of their army. They just didn't ever have a chance of winning. This is one of the main reasons why Ivypool is so ineffective as well. Because the protagonists don't have any impact on the conflict's outcome, the Dark Forest would lose regardless of their actions. She didn't bring them any intel to use in defeating them. And because the Dark Forest is actually a small group of purely evil guys, there isn't even anything useful she could bring back to help them learn more about them. When evil guys attack, hit them hard is the best advice you could give. In this situation, a spy couldn't help. And the few things she does learn, like herself being forced to kill Antpelt to prove her loyalty, she hides out of embarrassment. Omen of the Stars as a whole is, I would argue, better than Power of Three on a technical level. The plot has a direction and progresses steadily, if slowly, through to the end. The characters are often charming, and many side characters have sweet stories to follow. But it's a far cry from perfect, with protagonists that have no impact on the main story, and the villains being a bland, unthreatening force whose plan comes apart if you look at it for more than a moment. But those details are things that could be ironed out. This arc's potential is clear, and if the kinks were worked out, with the grandiosity and emotional appeal that it already has, it could become something truly great. So I hope I manage to do that now, as I begin writing the Omen of the Stars half of Paws of Stars. The third book, Inferno, is now up, and as always the link to the whole fanfiction is in the description below if you're interested. Thank you for watching, and always make sure to pay attention if 15 people ever start plotting the destruction of your civilization. They probably won't succeed anyway, but it's better to be safe, and engaged at all.